Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So before I start, Dutch Weather would like to apologize for how crazy it is today. So the daylight is going to keep changing all throughout the video. I apologize for that, there's really nothing I can do about it. And the second thing I wanted to tell you, just quickly throw it in there just so you're prepared. It is today, October 1st, which means that I'm approximately 3 weeks away from my due date. I don't think I'll go into labor any time within the next week or so. I shouldn't, I don't expect to, but you never know how things are going to go. So just so you know, if I disappear and like fall off the face of the earth and I stopped responding to things or uploading anything, then you know that's what's going on. I think a lot of you will be super understanding and won't be mad at me for disappearing, but I am trying to make the best out of my maternity leave. And I'm like trying to upload a lot of videos now so that I have produced enough content for you to have something to enjoy while I'm away. I'll even try, believe it or not, to have pre-filmed videos for you. I don't know if I'll succeed because for the most part when I film a video I just want to upload it immediately. I don't have the patience to wait for it to be uploaded later. That's just something to do with my crazy personality. I just don't like to wait for things. If I manage to actually pre-film videos for you, then you might not even notice completely that I fell off the face of the earth. You will though, because the Instagram posts will just cease completely. So let's just jump into the video. See? Now the sun is back. Crazy. Anyway, so the topic of today's video is my least favorite shade in the palette. This video is kind of a continuation, or not a continuation, but like a follow-up of a video that I did previously that I'm going to leave in the cards up here for you, which was my favorite shade in the palette. The favorite shade in the palette video was originally started by Georgia Harris and Lacie from Spooky Lips and Fat Hips, and I'm going to link their videos in the description box below for you so that you can check them out. And I think it was Elle from Elle S who took the idea to the next level, and she kind of talked about favorite and least favorite shade in the palette. I think it was Elle, but I'm not completely sure. I'll try to find the original source and link that in the description box below for you as well. Let's just jump into it. In no particular order, I'm just going to show you the palettes. They're not going to be the same palettes that I showed in my favorite shade in the palette video, because there are a lot of palettes in that video where I just simply don't have a least favorite shade, so there's really no point in me trying to figure out which is my least favorite shade in the palette. Another disclaimer I want to make is that if I were completely true and honest to you, most of the shades that you would see swatched on my arm today would be black shades, because whenever there's a black eyeshadow in an eyeshadow palette, I most of the time just don't appreciate it, because as far as I'm concerned, I need one black eyeshadow for the rest of my life and I don't need any more black eyeshadow because I hardly ever use it. So whenever there's a black eyeshadow in an eyeshadow palette, that's just by default my least favorite shade in the palette. However, you can agree with me, it would be a really boring video if I only swatched black eyeshadows for you, so I'm only going to swatch one black eyeshadow and I'm going to mention why I chose that one in particular. But yeah, so I'm going to try to go through palettes and I'm not going to swatch the black eyeshadow even if there's a black eyeshadow in some of those palettes, but I am also going to show you some other eyeshadows that I really dislike because of quality or the way they look on me or something like that. That was a very, very long introduction. I apologize in advance. So the first palette I want to show you is the Suri palette from Suri Cosmetics, and that is the only palette in which I am going to show you the black eyeshadow as my least favorite shade in the palette. And the reason for that is because when I was looking at the pictures of the eyeshadow palette online, for some reason my silly brain decided that this black eyeshadow here is a dark navy blue. So up till the point that I opened the palette, I was convinced that this is a dark navy blue that would like pair up really nicely with like the blue shade and stuff, and it would contrast nicely with the warmer tone shades. No, it's just a black eyeshadow. It's called Panther. I don't even know why I thought it was a navy blue. So this is the only black eyeshadow that I'm going to swatch for you. It's a decent black eyeshadow. There's nothing wrong with the eyeshadow itself. I just will probably hardly ever use this. So, while it's a decent black eyeshadow, it is just my least favorite shade in this palette because it's black. Moving on to my Sugar Pill Burning Heart Quad, there is one shade in here that I'm not particularly fond of, and that's for no other reason but just because it's just not my favorite yellow. You know, I appreciate yellow a lot, and I do like yellow as a color generally speaking. It's just the tone of this eyeshadow that's not my favorite. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, so this is the shade Buttered Cupcake, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's not my favorite shade of yellow. I prefer my yellows to be more like sun yellow, like lighter types of yellow, and this one's just a little too dark for me. I still use it, I still enjoy it, but if I have to pick a least favorite shade from this squad, it would be this one. Next up, let's talk about the two Urban Decay palettes that I have here, and one is this super old shadow box. Oh, I don't know the name of that palette anymore. I always forget the name of that palette. Anyway, it's a really old eyeshadow palette from Urban Decay, and these are the shades that it contains. And truthfully speaking, all of these three here, with the black of course, would be my least favorite shade. I'm not going to swatch the black because otherwise we're going to just have black eyeshadow on my hand. But none of these three here speaks to me. These are all like neutral eyeshadows. But if I have to pick one that I really think would do absolutely nothing for me, it's this shade here, which is called Underground. Again, there's nothing wrong with the actual quality of the eyeshadow. It's a beautiful metallic soft neutral, but first of all, neutrals never really float my boat much. And shades like this, while they swatch beautifully and look beautiful on other people, they just never do it for me. Whenever I put them on my eyes, it just looks like, why did I even bother putting makeup on? Next up we have the Electric palette, where even though it was very hard to pick a least favorite shade, I can immediately tell you which shade is the one that I'm the least drawn to for several reasons. Is this shade here, which is called Revolt, and it's silver. Again, nothing wrong with the quality of this shade. Revolt is a beautiful silver, but I just... First of all, Urban Decay, can we stop putting silver in every single eyeshadow palette? It's enough with the silver. Second of all, I just don't use silver eyeshadow much. I just don't think it looks very flattering on me, so I don't really use it all that often. And the third reason, and I think probably the most important one for me personally, is this silver makes absolutely no sense with the rest of the color story of this palette. It's called the Electric palette. It's full of like super punchy, colorful eyeshadows, and all of a sudden you have that silver there. Why? I don't get it. So, nothing wrong with it, beautiful silver shade. I just have hardly any use for it, and it's kind of like meh in this palette for me. Okay, next up I have two of my Too Faced palettes here, and the first one I want to show you is the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar, which contains these beautiful warm-toned eyeshadows. I did mention this eyeshadow also in my favorite shade in the palette video, because it was the eyeshadow that my eye was immediately attracted to, which is this blue over here, which is called Blueberry Swirl. While it looks like a beautiful blue in the pan, it's actually a really disappointing shade. So while I appreciated the effort that Too Faced put in actually putting a somewhat colorful eyeshadow in this palette, I must say this eyeshadow is just so incredibly disappointing, because there's just no pigment, no impact, there's just... I'm digging my finger in there just to do a swatch for you. So you have to pack it on quite a bit, and it's just... It's a very disappointing shade. And that's why I dislike it, and it's my least favorite shade in this palette, which is sad because I was hoping for this to be like the pop of color in this otherwise very neutral eyeshadow palette. Next up we have the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, and over here I do actually enjoy most of these shades. I do not like and care much for Talk Derby to Me, which is this blackened purple with pink sparkles in it. First of all, it's like one of those matte shades with sparkles in them. I hope they're going to stop making those, because who needs that? And second of all, it's just a patchy mess. It doesn't do much. It doesn't even work very well for creating depth in your looks because it's so patchy. So I kind of use it as an eyeliner. You can like foil it with Duraline or something. You can pat it on your black liner, or you can just push it with a angled brush in your lashes if you want to create some definition in your lash line. So that's the only thing I ever use this eyeshadow for. So I have 4 Juvia's palettes, and in 2 of them I really couldn't think of a shade that I dislike. However, in the other 2 I could actually find shades that I dislike, so I'm going to show those to you. So from the Deuce palette from Juvia's Place, there's one shade that just doesn't do it for me, and it's this shade here, which is called Mont Blanc. I don't know what the idea was behind this shade. I've heard that it's supposed to be a sage green. It's just like a metallic silvery type of shade, and just like with the electric palette, there's nothing wrong with the actual shade, but silvers are just not shadows that I use often, and I don't get the whole point behind this shade being in an eyeshadow palette which is supposed to have pastel-y colors. I just... why is a metallic silver in this color story? I don't get it. What are you supposed to pair it with? What is the story behind it? I just don't get it. The only thing I can imagine might be interesting is if I mix this shade with this shade to create some sort of a green tinge to this, because this doesn't have anything green to it. Next up we have the Magic palette by Juvia's Place, and once again it is this shade over here which is called Vi, and it's kind of a silver shade that is my least favorite. Once again, silvers are just not the kind of shade that I'm gravitating towards much, so I just never really appreciate silvers in palettes much. So while this is a beautiful gunmetal color, I'll hardly ever use it. Now that I'm looking at it, it seems like it has a bit of like a purplish tone to it, especially comparing to these 2 shades here. So maybe I should just give it another try, but you know, at first instance, and that's probably the only shadow that I really haven't used from this palette yet. I only have one Kat Von D palette to show you here. I've addressed this already at the favorite shade in the palette video, that Kat and I have broken up. However, I still want to enjoy the makeup that I have bought from her, because I bought it with my hard-earned money, and I did enjoy it at the time that I bought it. So just a little disclaimer, no worries, I'm not buying from Kat Von D anymore, but I'm including her palettes if there are shades in there that I want to talk about. And there is a shade in here that I want to mention as my least favorite one, and that is this one here, which is called Ashes. It does look like a very interesting shade because it's like this kind of taupey beige color with green sparkles in it. But once again, who asked for matte eyeshadows with sparkles in them? So this is a very beige eyeshadow. It's very cool toned and it just doesn't look great on me. I've tried putting this on my lids with a glitter glue and I just don't see anything special about it. The glitter doesn't really show up much, so to be honest, it's better to use this as some sort of like a transition shade and never bother actually trying to put it on my lids, because it's a very meh kind of shade. So from the Saint and Sinner palette, this is definitely my least favorite shade. Moving on, I only have 3 palettes to show you, and they're all from Anastasia Beverly Hills. So let's start with one of my favorite palettes from her, which is the Subculture palette. Overall, a favorite palette. I really enjoy this palette. My least favorite shade in here is this shade over here, which is called Mercury. This one right here. For no other reason but because these types of shades just look absolutely dreadful on me, because I have somewhat like neutral to warm tones to my skin, and using these types of shades just looks very unflattering on me. I look really dead. You can see these 2 shades are kind of in the same veins. This one is just much more pigmented and punchy. It's a really nice shade and I do still use it on occasion when I'm doing somewhat more cooler looks, but in general these kind of shades just look always horrible on me. I wish they looked better. I wish I could use them. They just look horrible. From the Prism palette, which is another one of my favorite Anastasia palettes because it's so beautiful and colorful, I'm not going to mention it, the black shade, by default, but another shade that I find kind of disappointing and I just really dislike because it just doesn't look as pretty when you use it, as compared to in the pan, is this one here, which is called Osiris, and it's like a dark purple. It's like a blackened purple with a lot of like purple sparkles to it, and this shade is a little bit dry, and for some reason I can just never make it work when I put it on my eyes. It swatches really beautifully or at least its swatch is pretty decent, but for some reason when I put it on my eyes, maybe I'm using the wrong brushes, I can just never quite make this eyeshadow really work for me. So that's why, aside from the black, this is my other least favorite shade in the Prism palette. The last palette I want to show you is the Modern Renaissance. I'm not going to show you the Norvina palette because there isn't a single shade in there that I don't like. From the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette, my least favorite shade is going to probably come as a surprise to a lot of you because I think it's a lot of other people's favorite shade. But if I show you the palette up close, you will notice that I've hardly ever touched this shade. It's this one over here, which is called Love Letter. Love Letter is a gorgeous shade, don't get me wrong. It's a beautiful, beautiful, like berry color. The only reason I dislike it is because these tones of berry, let me do a better job at swatching this. This shade of berry just doesn't look very good on me. I mean, the quality of the eyeshadow is outstanding. I just hardly ever dip into this shade because I just never really like the way that it looks on me. So there you have it, guys. These are all my least favorite shades in eyeshadow palettes. While there are a couple of like odd shades thrown here and there, I think for the most part you can clearly see that it's like taupey, cool toned colors and neutrals and silvers that I really am not very fond of. Like I said, if I could swatch black eyeshadows for you, then my hand would probably be half filled with black eyeshadows. So yeah, that is really me when it comes to shades that I really dislike and never use in palettes, and those are silvers, blacks and very cool toned browns, because like taupey browns, because they just look like shit on me. So overall, I would say that the least favorite shade of the palette was less of a surprise to me. Like, the combination of colors was much less of a surprise to me than the favorite shade in the palette. I think with the favorite shade in the palette, I saw like a pattern and like a color that I really didn't expect to see. Whereas here, I really feel like this pretty much describes my dislike for certain shades in makeup. If you are a content creator and you would like to do this video, please go ahead, because I think these are so much fun to watch. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already and you would like to see more content from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!